The director of Farmageddon, Kristin Canty, is our guest, and she's also joined us with Linda Faillace, who has been a victim of the establishment persecution for her evil farming activities. But the point is, we're told, get sustainable, get back to the land. But then there's a massive rural council, federal, state governments harassing people, can't have gardens in your yard, even on your own property, can't have chickens in the country, zoning, total control, animal ID, premises ID. This film is so professional. Farmageddon, and it goes over all this information, and is available at Infowars.com, and it's won a lot of awards. The LA Times called it an eye-popping wake-up call. Kristin, tell us about the film, why you decided to make it, break down some of the most important points, and then introduce us to the author you've gone on with us, who has been persecuted and is similar to the stories that are in your film.
Thank you. I made the film because I found out about the farm raids. I met people from the Farm to Consumer Legal Defense Fund, and they asked me to have a fundraiser for them. I didn't know what they did, and when I researched it, I found out that they were defending all these farmers for free that had been raided. And so I researched all the raids and just got really angry about it, that these people were just trying to supply food for their neighbors. People were forming co-ops in order to get food from their neighbors, in order to get food from neighboring farms. Humans
were going back to normal human activity, and the big corporations don't like that.
And the government was raiding them for it. So I decided to make a movie about it.
Well, it's an incredible film, and it's so well done. How long did it take you to make it? It's being very well received. It's a great tool to show the coordinated mafia attacks on farming communities. And then why do you think the system is so upset about evil people farming?
It took me about 2.5 years to make, and basically the answer that the government will give you, the answer that, I was very grateful when government officials did speak on my film, because it was very hard to get them to speak, and the answer that they'll give you always is it's in the name of food safety, to keep us safe. And so, so Linda will tell you her story, and she was raided and her sheep were killed, and also in the name of food safety.
And let's go to Linda. Linda, tell us your story that you then put in your book, Mad Sheep, author of Mad Sheep.
Thanks, Alex. What happened with us is that we had a family farm. It's called Three Shepherds in honor of our 3 children, because each of our children were very involved with the farm. And we worked closely with the USDA, imported sheep from Belgium and the Netherlands, went through all the hoops that we had to jump through. We had 2 months of quarantine over in Europe, a month quarantine here in the United States, that all the sheep passed with flying colors. 2 years after the animals were here, they were all settled, and we had lots of lambs on the ground. They were doing well. We had a thriving business. USDA shows up at our farm and says that they were concerned that because our sheep came from Europe, they could be susceptible to mad cow disease. Even though there's no sheep in the world that's ever had mad cow disease. My husband and I and the children lived in England for 3 years, and I worked with a professor, Eric Lamming, who set public policy for mad cow disease. So it was something I was very familiar with. My husband has a PhD in animal science. So we approached everything from a very scientific perspective. And we kept telling USDA there's nothing wrong with our sheep. We offered all sorts of options. After this had gone on for 2 years, we said, okay, take the originals and test them. If they all test negative, let us keep the offspring. And to make a very long story short, it fell on deaf ears, and at 5:30 in the morning, 17 days before an appeals court hearing that we had, USDA showed up with 42 armed federal agents and USDA officials, took our sheep, all of them, even the lambs, took them out to Iowa and killed all of them for a disease that doesn't exist to this day.
And let's be clear, they're coming out with cloned cows, pigs, GMO, toxic waste fed to them, all honeybees dying, pharmacological crops that grow toxins in them. All that's great. but they use that as a pretext to harass people. Have you heard about the case now where they're killing people's pigs, saying that they could be feral instead of dealing with the actual feral hog problem that I'm told is not very bad in Michigan? Have you heard about that newest case?
Yes, I have. And there's been, they're forcing the farmers to kill pigs. And I've heard that if any of the pigs have black on them, where over in China, all the pigs are black, and USDA imported Chinese pigs into Nebraska, and then some of those pigs were sold to farmers because they're extremely prolific. And that was actually why my husband and I went to Britain, he was studying these Chinese Meishan pigs and trying to figure out why they were so prolific. So here, a breed of pig that has now been bred with American pigs, if any of the animals have black on them, the USDA is now making the animals be killed.
But I'm not a farmer, but I've done ranching. I've worked for a large animal vet, and I mean, I went to the livestock show with my children a few weeks ago because they're small, like to look at animals, and they had. Sometimes they have 20, 30 different types of pigs. This year they didn't have that many, but most of them have red hair, black spots, black hair. I mean, most breeds of pig look like this, and now they're just saying a pig has black or red on them, they're dead, and people are like, my pigs are pinned up. And, of course, it's Big Agro wants to kill all these other pig herds that are out there. Just incredible.
Right. When we met with the USDA and asked them why they were going after us, they said they were under political pressure from the pharmaceutical and the beef industry. And so they admitted that there was nothing wrong with our sheep, and they actually used our sheep. A USDA whistleblower came forth and has evidence that they used the sheep to get $450 million in funding to upgrade some laboratory facilities they have in Iowa.
No, I remember. They wanted to piggyback. I mean, your case was in the news at the time. They wanted to piggyback the fear of the foot and mouth, and then the fear of the mad cow over there as a pretext. And they did all sorts of stuff like that over here, and it's all part of these publicity stunts. Just amazing. Let's continue going back to the director here, Kristin. Kristin, give us some of the other stories you break down in the film.
There's a Mennonite farmer who was just, again, supplying food in a private buying club to his community in Pennsylvania. This was in Pennsylvania. And in Pennsylvania, raw milk is actually legal to sell out of stores. But in many of these cases, the consumers also want cheese, cream, and yogurt, and you're not allowed to sell those things.
And let's be clear, Whole Foods, 2 miles from me, sells raw milk-made cheese, and as long as it's from bigger firms and go through the elitist stuff, it's okay. But how dare these Amish or Mennonites, though, do it? It's very, I mean, how dare you have that delicious cheese?
Raw cheese has to be aged over 60 days, and but some people want the choice of having the other raw cheeses that aren't aged over 60 days, and the raw yogurt and the cream, and that's all not legal in the eyes of, I don't think there's any state government that allows the raw yogurt and the raw cream. So, so they formed a private buying club so that they could purchase directly from this farmer. And at first, the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture said that this was okay. And then, as in the other cases, as it became more popular or as someone else took charge, they didn't like it anymore, and so they raided this farmer, took away $60,000 worth of his milking equipment, took away all of the food, and let it rot, and terrorized the farmer and his children. So
just outrageous, and yes. But it's so prolific. What do you guys think of the latest case of the gentleman who'd had chickens for over a decade, was popular in the community? The town had expanded, and they told him you can't have chickens. They wanted his land for a green space, and they blew his house up. Looks like they killed him, and they won't. And they tell our reporters they can't film or even film the city building, and that there's no First Amendment in that town in Georgia, there in Roswell, Georgia.
Yeah, I think that chicken farmer killed himself. And
well, no, the police say he did.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I don't just believe Boss Hogg when they tell me something.
This is happening more and more often where, the USDA just said that they wanted the large chicken processing plants to regulate themselves, and yet I have 11 chickens in my backyard, and I have I have an 11-page document saying how I need to take care of my animals, and an inspector comes and I pay $50, and they come out once a year to make sure that my animals have enough space.
Yeah, they're parasites. You've got animals out in the open, I see this all the time, but if you've got them chained with their feet growing into the floor, being fed toxic food and antibiotics and GMOs and hormones that we all eat, that's beautiful and wonderful. And folks, I've been inside these big million chicken facility areas. It's like hell on earth. You've got to wear breathing masks. The animals are half dead. You're eating all the meat with the toxins in it, but they are harassing people and small farms everywhere. It's time to stop paying the parasite commissar that money. Where do you live?
Concord, Massachusetts.
Unbelievable. So they just show up, and the government has to make sure you're allowed to do that.
They do. They need to make sure that my chickens are okay and that they have enough space. But I'm only feeding myself with my eggs. So it is funny that the people that are feeding the masses are allowed to crowd their chickens and feed them whatever they want and feed them waste and get away with it, where people that are just feeding themselves in their small communities and their neighbors seem to be the ones that are being harassed.
Yeah, going in one of these big facilities, it's like going to a horror movie. I mean, words can't describe it. I ought to go into one sometime. I haven't been to one in like 20 years, and because I've actually lived and worked in the country for a time. It is unbelievable. I mean, if I describe what these giant facilities are like, people wouldn't believe me. And again, they use animal cruelty laws to harass someone with their own chickens for their own house and their own family. Mm-hmm. But happy chickens, hopping around in the yard, in the tree, whatever, jumping in your lap like domesticated chickens do, happy, not ever being eaten, not ever being killed. But then on top of it, you've got these giant facilities, and it's Big Agra writing all this. And notice, that's a pre-regulation on you, like you've done something wrong, so you can't be trusted. And now they're saying they want to inspect our gardens because we might be doing something wrong in those too. Again, in America, you're not allowed to do something with your own garden. I mean, this isn't a free country.
Right, and the odd thing is that there's so much transparency with our neighborhood farmer. You can just walk onto their land and you can see how they're growing their food, and you can make your own decision about whether you want to eat that food or not. But these large processing plants, as I try to get in them with my cameras, I tried to get in them when I was making my documentary, and of course, you're not allowed in them, and you're certainly not allowed to film in them. And so now I have a rule that if a farmer won't let me film their property, then I won't eat their food.
Well, they are so scared, as you know. Talk to me, both of you, ladies, about the movement I'm seeing, but give me your expert perspective on it. I'm seeing a huge exodus, especially by nouveau riche, middle class, upper middle class, but also working class, to rural areas and forming communities and really boosting the level of quality of life, the health of children. And I think this has really got the system scared. And there is a war against small farms and true sustainable living. And Farmageddon details this.
Yeah, and I think that's what the real value of Farmageddon is as a farmer and a scientist, someone who has the animals, who works the land. When USDA comes after you, they use all of their weight, and you think you're totally alone and you're just one person fighting against them, and that, you just happen to be at the wrong place at the wrong time. And what Farmageddon demonstrates is we're not alone, that unfortunately this is happening all across the country. It's happening even up in Canada, and it's opening people's eyes and to showing, that the government is not there to protect our food safety. If you want safe food, it's like Kristin said, you want to be able to go to your neighbor and go to your local farm, and that's where you're going to find food, the good food. And I am seeing a lot of people heading out into the country and taking matters into their own control to keep their family healthy through what they feed them.
And I think this is the real revolution, is in health, is in vitamins, minerals, farming. Even if you live in the semi-rural area, just begin. And then that'll start making you think about what else you're eating from the store. But it's not just growing it yourself. Like you said, it's being in the communities where people are growing. Then you'll find out not just what's healthy, but who's got the really good stuff. And it's a real human community, and there's nothing like getting your feet in the black soil. There's nothing like integrating and hooking back in and finding your humanity.
Yes, totally.
Right. Yeah, that's scaring them, isn't it?
I think it is, and they just keep applying more and more pressure. You know, USDA has their own investigative and enforcement services, so it's literally their own police force. And when they came after our sheep and they couldn't find anything wrong with them, they did a criminal investigation to see if anything that when we imported the sheep was illegal, and they couldn't find anything wrong there. So then they did a personal criminal investigation of my husband, Larry. And I'm hearing this more and more.
Gibson Guitars has certified government legal wood that's already fallen. They've been investigating them off and on for 10 years. And last time I heard, just raided them again. Because they dare to make things in America.
Right.
And they've been told, move to China, you'll be totally left alone. There's a war against America.
It's bizarre. So the reason why I made this film is to give these farmers and these small business people a voice, because it just doesn't seem like they have a voice in the mainstream media. The government always gets the last word, and it's always the word of safety, where if you watch my movie, my opinion is that they're barking up the wrong tree as far as safety is concerned. And like you said, condoning and allowing, GMOs and chemicals in our food, and, animal cruelty and animal crowding, and then on the other side, harassing the small farmer who's trying to do things as best as they can.
Well, just the look of the film, too, and the shots, the talent that you brought to bear making this film, it's something everybody's got to see. Farmageddon, available at Infowars.com. Incredible. We're going to come back and continue with both you ladies and talk about some more of the stories in the film. Folks, I live in a farming community outside Austin. I have family that farms and ranches in East Texas, from, cows to grapes. And let me tell you, they've got environmental spies everywhere harassing everybody, saying we're bad for the environment and leaving Big Agri alone. This is serious fascism. Linda, you're going to be leaving us here in about 5 minutes, and the director's going to stay with us for another 30 to get more into the film here and open the phones up for some of the farming victims out there who want to get involved on air. But what else can you share with us now that you've been a victim of this for so long? And earlier you were talking about that you've seen it intensifying now. Yeah,
I was hoping that what I had seen in Farmageddon and what I was reading, that it was going to make USDA and the FDA back off of attacking farmers, but unfortunately it seems to be increasing. And the good thing is that people are not staying quiet. People are speaking up. People like Kristin are making a documentary and educating people out there. USDA spent $1 million, according to their own documents, $1 million watching us. And when we took them to court, we got the diaries of, we called them the goons, that were watching us. And the day was broken down into 15-minute segments. And it would say where each of our family members were. And you're talking about our daughters were 13 and 14, and our son is 15 years old. And they're keeping track of us. And to spend taxpayers' money doing that for sheep that were not diseased, that were perfectly healthy, for a disease that doesn't exist, is ridiculous, in my opinion. And we're just one of many people out there that this is happening to.
Well, it's true. And again, even the news has said, why is there a war against people? And it's these bureaucrats, and they act like it's dirty and bad. And what do you think of Rawsome Foods, or the lady that was going to go to jail for a garden in her yard, and there wasn't even a law against it, and the city said, well, we don't like it. I mean, it's just wild.
Right. The amount of power that the government has is incredible. And the person who ordered these criminal investigations of us was just a mid-level bureaucrat. And what's really bizarre is that you have all these organizations, such as the FDA and the USDA, that those are the people making the laws, not the people that we're electing, but the people that are not elected, people that get appointed. And I think there's a real imbalance of power there.
Well, and they also, again, just revel in harassing people, and this is all Agenda 21. That's what they're doing. They use environmental rules and other things to shut down the general economy, and then the globalists that write up all these world regulations, because it's being done universally across the planet, they are exempt. So it allows certain groups to operate and others not to. Kristin, do you have any comments to add to what she said on this point?
No, I'm just... It just, unfortunately, she's right. It does seem to be really ramping up. When I finished my movie, Rawson Foods had just had their second raid, and so that raid is in my movie. And after I finished, and actually the movie released theatrically, that's when they had another raid. And James and Sharon Palmer, I know that you've covered this extensively, and I appreciate it. You know, got thrown in jail for a number of days, and they were treated horribly, and they've been harassed. And Rawson Foods is completely shut down now. And there's been 2 other Amish farms that have been shut down, and every day I hear of a new farm that's being shut down. So I find it very sad that it's increasing, not decreasing.
No, it's a reign of terror, and it's outrageous. I want to thank Linda for joining us, her book, author of Mad Sheep. We're going to come back and talk to the director on the other side. The film is Farmageddon. Get it out to everyone you know. It's available at Infowars.com. We will expose and defeat these tyrants. Kristin Canty is our guest for another 30 minutes. I know we got loaded phones that were on before I went to her. And I want to be able to talk to all those people, but I think it's important that we be able to talk to some of the farmers involved. So I'm going to do this. Guys, can we fire up our phone system here? Is that possible? I'm going to fire it up right now. The phone system isn't open yet. It'll open in about 2 minutes. So be ready for the phone calls to come in. We'll open it. You're able to get in for about a minute. 50 phone calls will come in. Or I'm going to open my phone system up instead of the Genesis phone system so you can get in. Then I'll try to get to the others later. Bill, Peter, Levi, Carol, and others that are holding there patiently. But if you're a farmer, rancher, your quick horror story in 60 seconds, or your good story of the loving federal government out of their jurisdiction, that's another issue. Now we have TSA at checkpoints on highways and with undercovers spying on people on buses and restaurants. East Germany had it. Cuba has it. Why not us? All the science fiction dystopic movies do. Well, we got to have that. Well, John Corzine steals billions. The number to join us, if you're a farmer or rancher out there, is 877-789-ALEX, 877-789-ALEX, 877-789-2539. I'll give that out one more time when we come back from break. This is a short segment, but let's get back, Kristin, to the film itself and some of the other stories that are in it and why people need to see it.
Well, there's a woman in Ohio. I don't know if you covered this one, but it's the Manna Storehouse. And she found 40 Amish farms around her that had no way to get their product to market. So she had a great idea where one week she would go and get eggs from one farmer and vegetables from another and chicken and beef. And she brought it back to her house, and she shared these duties with her neighbors. And so the next week, another neighbor would go around and collect all this food and bring it back. And so eventually it got bigger and bigger. And so the Ohio Department of Agriculture caught wind of it. And their response to that was to go in with, I think, as many as 11 armed agents. She had 8 kids in the house that were homeschooled, and they kept the family behind closed doors for 6 hours while they tore her house apart, stole her computers, took her cell phones. Her son was in Iraq at the time, and he was calling, and they wouldn't let her answer the phone, and they took their phones. And they took all of their meat and all of their food that was for their own consumption and for the co-op, all for a third-degree misdemeanor. And actually, that family was never charged with anything. They ended up never really finding anything to charge them with, and yet that was the terror that they endured. So these were the kinds of stories that got me angry, and I couldn't let it go. And that's when I traveled around. And
there's got to be class action suits against Big Pharma and Big Agri, because on record, they are the ones funding and lobbying for regulations and for this harassment. And then every time they cause some big food crisis, they then sick more bureaucrats on innocent small groups.
Right. I mean, the problem is that there was a class action, there was a suit in this case. The Farm to Consumer Legal Defense Fund and the Ohio Civil Rights Union both sued for civil rights violations on the Stowers family. And unfortunately, the court sided with the government. And that's been happening again and again, too. So I think the only answer to this is that the people really have to band together, and we have to really educate ourselves on this issue and band together to, elect officials that understand this issue, that understand that the government's been barking up the wrong tree, and elect officials that care about our civil rights.
Well, it's the right tree, though, if they work for foreign corporations that are engaged in a total militarized takeover of the economy. And that's what this is. That's what Agenda 21 is. That's why I think your film, Farmageddon, dovetails well with Behind the Green Mask, you and Agenda 21. Key weapons in the Infowar, both available at Infowars.com. So I've opened up our phone system right here in my studio for people that have been victims of the federal government out of their jurisdiction, even harassing people with 5 chickens. Oh, these are open range, totally healthy? Well, let us harass you. Again, Big Pharma, Big Agri, same group, openly financing the shutdown of family farms and other sustainable operations, all part of Agenda 21. Agenda 21 is about shutting down the economy under the guise of environmentalism. Nothing to do with the environment. It's a power grab. So the toll-free number to join us is 877-789-2539. 877-789-2539. I know there's a lot to add here, Kristin, but anything else you'd like to point out before we go to phone calls pertaining to Farmageddon, the unseen war on America's family farms?
No, I really appreciate you helping to spread this message. This whole journey started with me. And I used to be the one that wanted to bleach everything and sterilize everything, and we got sick. And so I'm lucky that I found these foods. It was actually raw milk that ended up healing my son of allergies. He was very, very sick with allergies and asthma. And so I started to eat this way and saw the government trying to shut it down. And I appreciate people like you trying to spread the word about this.
Well, that's another big point you made. I have a big scientific study out today on autism where they break down, a major journal, long-term study, what other scientists have already told us, that what they're doing is going in and growing crops on dead soil that's then full of heavy metals because of the toxic fertilizer they're using. That's bioaccumulating. Then we don't have regular minerals in us that also take out the impurities. So it's a double whammy, and autism's exploding.
Right. I was really lucky. Unfortunately, I didn't know about this before I had kids, but soon after I had kids, because they got sick, I found the Weston Price Foundation, and that taught me a lot about nutrient-dense foods and seeking out nutrient-dense foods. And so I did that for 10 years until I found out that the government was really cracking down on farmers that were growing nutrient-dense foods.
My point is that people need to discover growing food or buying food grown on real soil organically, magic effect. Taking powerful natural mineral vitamin supplements at levels way over what the government says you need. Amazing effect. And Big Pharma knows this. They want us sick so that they can come burn and cut and work on us. Spend a little bit more time how you discovered all this and what it did for your family.
I was so lucky I discovered it. Basically, my doctor told me that my son was allergic to the world, which was grass, dust, bees, every kind of pollen. So inside and outside, the entire environment. He was just coughing and sneezing and screaming all night that he couldn't breathe, and he had an inhaler, and the doctors kept giving me stronger and stronger medications, and they just weren't working. That's how I had to find an alternative. And so finally, one of the doctors said that his immune system was so severely depressed that he would be on these strong medications the rest of his life. He probably wouldn't grow. He could never get near animals. He could never be out. It would be hard for him to be outside. And a naturopath doctor, luckily, told me to take him off all the drugs and find alternatives. And I kept researching and researching on the internet until finally I found enough compelling stories that raw milk could be a cure for allergies. And at the time, I was scared to death. I thought it was disgusting to even think about raw milk, but I ventured out and met my farmer and asked a lot of questions and drank a lot of it myself to make sure I didn't die before I gave it to my 4-year-old son. And I loved it, and I gave it to him, and he is 16 now. He doesn't have any allergies. He's an athlete. He's 6 feet tall. He plays hockey, plays sports outside, inside. We have animals, and so it works. Real food really can work.
Wow, imagine real food's what we need, not McDonald's food that doesn't decompose.
Yeah, exactly.
And again, I've known this for a long time, but just was so set in a quasi-healthy, quasi-unhealthy that I never really started taking the plunge, and I've just begun. And it's like, this is so powerful, this information, and that's what the eugenicists are desperate for us to discover. They're building a false environment to enslave us with sickness. They're scared we're getting off the reservation, and they're sending the Rural Council, Agenda 21, after us. And the answer is to proliferate the swap meets and the farms and the gardens even faster, where they cannot stop us. You want to defeat the New World Order, folks? Educate people, speak out, but also just start living better and start educating others and creating communities. This will bring them down. Let's go ahead and talk to CJ in Michigan. You're on the air with the director and creator of Farmageddon. Go ahead, CJ. Good to talk to you. You're on air with us.
Yeah, thanks. I'm an urban farmer here in Michigan. You know, got the garden in the front yard. Haven't had any problems with that. Last year, got a goat, and I mean, it was like like I had killed somebody. So I got the summons. You know, I got the notice to get rid of it. Fines coming, or jails coming, this and that. So I'm doing all kinds of research, trying to find laws, Michigan Right to Farm Act, getting obstacles after obstacles. But bottom line is, this is my life. This is my family's future. You know, we have a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
By the way, my grandfather worked in the oil fields. He brought a little goat home that was orphaned. Its mother had been run over, and it grew, and they kept it for a long time. And then, you know, years later, gave it to a farmer, but it would jump up on the mantle and stuff. They love that goat. I mean, goats, a single one, you don't want a bunch of them, they'll eat your yard. I mean, those are pretty nice little pets. And they're saying you can't have this evil goat, but I guess they're glad Michigan's collapsing, though. I guess that's fun, though.
Yeah, it's real. I mean, it's a fun. There's a different. Okay, me and you agree that the right to travel is there, but they call it a privilege. But who can say that life? Okay, it can be argued that you can be born and not ever step into a car and you'll still live, but you need water, you need food, and you need shelter. How can they restrict a fundamental right?
No, I hear you. So what's happening with the goat?
Well, I had to get rid of the goat because I just don't have the time to fight it. But it's coming to the point where I got bees coming tomorrow. I'm just gonna take the fine. I'm gonna not pay it, and I'm just.
Oh no, they don't want bees. The bees all have to die. You can't have those. I appreciate your call. What an evil caller. While the honeybees are collapsing, they're begging you to keep them, but then when you do, they come after you. This is terrible that he would do such a thing. What do you say to that, Kristin?
like I said, I've seen this over and over again. It's happening everywhere. But luckily, I mean, the hope that I have is that it's happening so much, and it's just getting so over the top right now, and so many people are seeing it that people are starting to wake up. So that's what I'm hoping, that people will see the film, that people will start, waking up, that people will start banding together. And, I'm really sorry to that farmer that he doesn't have time to fight it. It takes so much time to fight this. But if we can find groups of people to fight it together and form groups and go to the legislators and try to fight it together, we'd have a better chance.
Absolutely. I'm taking the next step towards getting the chickens and doing everything else. Just because I need to be prepared, but also because it hurts the New World Order. And whatever I cannot buy from their big mega devil stores, whatever I can do to pull myself out, I'm planting grapevines, I'm doing all sorts of other stuff, blackberries, whatever I can do to not be part of their big sick system. Going to farmers market, buying from locals, buying local raw milk, had some this morning. Buying local farmers' eggs. I'm pulling out of your system, starting to buy local farmers' beef. I'm pulling out of your system. I'm pulling out of your system. I'm pulling out of your dirtbag system. Let's go ahead and talk to David in New Jersey. You're on the air with the director of the film. Go ahead.
Hey, Alex. Hi, Kristin. How are you today?
Good. Go ahead.
Good. Real quick, the right to farm ordinance is something you need to look at from a community level. Here in New Jersey, in my township, we have the right to farm, regardless of the size of parcel of land. I have apple trees in my front yard, chickens going in the back, goats. This is a sort of that most people need to group up together in their community and pass. The right to farm ordinance is something that you need to look at. The state of New Jersey has adopted to the Department of Agriculture here also the right to farm ordinances at the community level. So people need to rally together to get this happening at the local level. And when local people rally together, trust me, the feds have a very difficult time trying to do anything about it.
Well, once you've had real milk, you don't go back. Again, I've studied it. You go back to the 30s and 40s, big pharma, big agri, same group, convinced everybody that raw milk wasn't as good, and you want the new pasteurized stuff just so they could ship it further, have dirty milk with feces and blood, overwork the cows. Then they started passing ordinances that it had to be from certain groups, certain companies. And then over time, they just phased it out to where now the counterfeit that is just like liquid artery sludge is what people think milk is versus real milk. And so as people segue from the GMO, deadly milk that gives you cancer with the growth hormone in it, to then, oh, okay, we're organic, we're not, we don't have GMO, to, no, now I want the real thing. Once you get real milk, you're like, how did I ever drink this sludge?
Exactly. Real quick, if you're interested, you can go to Pittsgrove Township, is the township I'm calling from, and you could actually put right to farm. You could Google it, right to farm, Pittsgrove, New Jersey, and it's a great model ordinance. It was adopted. It is law. It's a law of the land here. Take a look at it. I think it's something that you could bring to various councils or township meetings and try to introduce.
Well, God bless you, sir. Great points. Human instinct is powerful, and despite all the brainwashing and dumbing down, people are buying 5 million guns a month, total all-time record. They're buying seeds, they're planting, everybody. It's like after 9/11, there was a baby boom for a year. In fact, that was when my wife and I, conceived our first child. Humans don't have to be told, an archetypal, you just saw a bunch of people killed, have kids. The way the system sold that was, we just lost half of America. It wasn't, but the way they sold it was, we're under attack. Boom, all these kids. It's the same thing. Now we really are under attack. Subtly, the media's not telling us, but everybody's buying guns. Everybody's starting, everybody. And so that's because the human instinct is very, very powerful. Kristin, your comments on that?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I'm happy that the farmer brought up the right to farm ordinances. And the other thing that's happening around the country, too, which is very positive, is that townships are starting the food sovereignty laws. They're passing laws trying to keep the state state and federal governments out of their farming system. So anything grown in their counties or towns can be sold, traded, swapped, co-opted, within that county without the state.
Exactly. And as the state says that's illegal, that's the line in the sand. When you can't live in the country and trade food with your neighbors, that is a total genocidal attack. That's what Stalin did to the Ukrainians. It doesn't get any more brazen than that.
It's very sad, I think, that we have to pass food sovereignty laws to try to keep the federal government out of our farms because they see them as a danger. I wish that didn't have to happen. Yeah, a danger. Yeah, your kids might not get autism if they, eat healthy food grown locally. We got to make sure those kids have horrible lives. Paul in New York, you're on the air with our guest. Go ahead.
Hey, Alex. I'm representing a farm that was a 400-acre farm in Finger Lakes region in New York. And they basically fear for their life at this point, and they're in hiding.
John Bound was telling me that the feds are in there trying to steal land left and right under a Agenda 21 move.
Well, this one actually was started in 2008. This farm was in possession of these people for about 105 years, their family. In 2008, Enron they wouldn't sign a lease with Enron, and the county went and wrote them a tax title to the farm out of thin air, and told them they were basically tax protesters and lost their farm, and they came in and let them live there, in quotes, that while they built gas wells, compressor station, and 3 pipelines across the property. Then they sold the title to the Watkins Glen International Racetrack, a.k.a. International Speedway Corporation, by warranty deed, and it went to court. Basically, New York State Supreme Court judge dismissed the case for lack of jurisdiction, finding that the Watkins Glen's attorneys admitted during the trial the farm was never foreclosed or any tax foreclosure proceeding. And get down to quick here, what happened afterward? It's basically stated that prevented them from ever trying to evict the people again. Well, instead of Watkins Glen getting anything done through, what they did was they went in on October 27, 2010, about 8 employees armed with machine guns, dressed in black, driving a Hummer tank and SUV parade of about 11 vehicles, and came to the farm without notice, without a warrant, without legal process of any kind, without any ID, without stating any legal purpose, drove over and smashed down the fences, the gates, broke into the homes. There's 2 homes, the barns, the pastures, buildings, seized all the worldly belongings and the animals. They had Scotch Highland cattle and sheep and Jersey milk cows, ducks, geese, guineas, turkeys.
So we're going to have to go here. The segment's almost over. Our guest is about to leave us. What's the name of the people in the case, sir?
That's the problem. The only thing I have here, and this came from an attorney friend of mine.
I understand. I appreciate your call, sir, if you can't tell us the story. But we'd like to help, but we just can't if you can't give us the info. This goes on everywhere now. It's the lawlessness of the government. They're not putting TSA in bars and restaurants and on buses because they want to play musical chairs with us. This is a classical tyranny takeover by foreign banks that have hijacked the federal government. And we've just got to get dug in and get ready because these people are criminals and they're coming and they mean business. Comments on what the caller was just saying?
Unfortunately, it's been happening too much, and America needs to wake up, and we really need to start fighting this. All Americans need to wake up. Let's
talk to Hannah in Hawaii. Hannah, you're on the air with our guest.
Hello, Alex.
Yes, sir.
Hello, Alex.
Yes, sir, you're on the air.
Hey, how are you doing?
I'm good. We're almost out of time. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I grew up on a dairy, and I drank raw milk my whole life. And I got a great immune system, so I think basically people just got to band together. I live in Hawaii. We live in a farming community. We have farmers markets every weekend. We don't really have any impact from the government, as far as them trying to break down our system. So
no, that's wrong. It's wrong that they're attacking the areas that aren't that strong yet. But
right.
but when you're got a lot of people involved, that's where the strength is.
Right, and there was only one instance where they tried to GMO a taro plant, which makes poi. If you know Hawaii, it's a plant that makes poi, and they couldn't do it because the community got together and got it in the newspapers, and they basically shut it down. So strength in numbers, I say, get it in the newspaper, you know, get your community together, work hard.
Well said. I appreciate your call from the beautiful island of Hawaii, or islands of Hawaii. That's a great point that he raises, though, that once you get a community doing this, there's not much the system can do. So that's the answer. Everybody needs to start doing this right now.
Yeah, that's true. That's the only answer, is to band together as communities and grow our own food and share our own food and protect your local farmer. And like you said, also, try to keep your dollars with your local farmer and in your local food system as much as possible.
Let me ask you this. From your study, what area of the country is the worst? Where do they really harass people the worst?
Right now, I'm so surprised because when I was traveling around, people said, you know, there's this magical place called Rawson Foods in Venice, and California could never be touched. And California is the worst, right? It's one of the worst. I think Michigan and Wisconsin are bad too, but California, all the goat herd shares and cow shares were shut down in a place where raw milk is legal. And they're fighting for GMO labeling, and there's a lot of GMOs being
Well, that's it. I mean, they're going after the head. If people in California are fighting for healthy food, that's where Obama's shutting down all the medical marijuana.
They're fighting for they're fighting for water rights there. They're fighting for land rights there. So I'm sad to say I think it's California right now, but I'm not positive.
Well, of course it is, because it's Agenda 21. They claim it's for the earth. It's not. It's behind the green mask. It's a skull. It's death. The book, Behind the Green Mask, available at Infowars.com along with Farmageddon. I have to say I am impressed, Kristin, with what you've done. You're an amazing filmmaker. And I know you're winning a lot of awards right now. The LA Times calls it an eye-popping wake-up call. Even establishment media has to admit you're right, because most people in the media aren't even evil. They're compartmentalized and ignorant, just like you were ignorant, or I was ignorant, thinking raw milk was bad, or thinking you'd have your son in a bubble and finding out it made him sick. We're all like that. We're all in a process of waking up, and just try it out, folks. You'll be amazed. Not eating GMO, not eating things like corn syrup full of lead and mercury. Your children will do good with nutrients, not lead and mercury. Thank you so much for spending time with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, there she goes. Powerful interview. If you think that was powerful, the film is amazing. Infowars.com and support our broadcast. We're going to be right back with Dr. Paul Craig Roberts. I'll try to jam in some of the other calls, holding on other subjects as well. Big news straight ahead. Stay with us. It's Friday, the 20th of April, 2012. I really enjoy it when the globalists try to poison us, and, well, we resist them via a free market system. Hello, my fellow Info Warriors. Alex Jones here, introducing you to the ProPure family of gravity-fed filters. Now, you know that the globalists are filling our water with radioactive isotopes, fluoride, lead, mercury, arsenic. And one of the few systems that can efficiently and economically remove or reduce down to non-detectable levels these poisons are gravity-fed filters. And ProPure is the top of the line. Their filters are impregnated with silver, a natural antibiotic. On top of that, they're bigger, so they filter faster. You don't have to prime these the first time you use them. It's amazing. Go to Infowars.com and click on the shopping cart link to see the entire family of these babies. Now, the fluoride they add to our water is so tiny that most filters can't cut it out. But ProPure has their system that will, again, reduce it to non-detectable levels, almost get all of it out of there. That's also available. And if you look at the different systems they offer, the ProPure Big Brush Finish is on a stand, so it's easier on a table or at your restaurant or wherever you have it to go up with a glass or a mug and fill it up. Then there's this big baby right here, the ProPure King large version. Got a lot of different options that come with it. Also, they have the ProPure Big, probably one of the best values out there. And of course, it's burnished stainless steel. And then what I use on my RV, something that's great for your hunting cabin or the back porch, is the ProPure Traveler. Small and portable, but packs a huge punch, cleans out all that garbage. They also have the glass sight spigot, so you don't have to take the top off and look in the bottom area to see how much water. You can see how fast it's filtering with this optional system. The globalists obviously are hitting us through our water. It's time to take control of our lives. It's time to not give our children and families these poisons, and these systems cut it down to non-detectable levels across the board. ProPure is the name. I only promote what I believe in, and I use ProPure in my home and my office. And I recommend that you check out the information on ProPure at Infowars.com. We already have the lowest price at Infowars.com on the ProPure gravity filter system. But when you add in the 10% off when InfoWarriors use the product code WATER at Infowars.com, nobody can top it. So again, it's a win-win-win. Stop drinking the poison water, checkmate the globalists when it comes to your health, and support Infowars.com and the work we're doing here. You know, many revolutionaries rob banks and things and kidnap people for funds. We promote in the free market the products we use that are about preparedness. That's how we fund this revolution against the New World Order in our move to restore our constitutional republic and a spirit of 1776 worldwide. Check it out at Infowars.com. ProPure, top of the line, #1, most powerful and effective and economical gravity-fed water system in the world. ProPure, available, discounted at Infowars.com. Don't forget product code WATER to save 10%. It's the latest generation, years in development. ProPure is the name.